the question to you really is, when I hear this, good news, but the question is, what do you intend to achieve? I mean, how do you get there? You mentioned that we should shape it. So how do you get, what do you like to achieve?
Well, Andreas, when my father first started articulating a conservation ethic for the oceans back in the 1960s, we still had 90% of our ocean. So conserving what we had left at the time seemed like an adequate strategy. But today we've lost over half of our oceans. So I think a new approach is needed. And at Oceans 2050, we believe that we need a shift from conservation to restoration, from sustainability to abundance. And that was an idea that was driven home for me when I was at a fisheries symposium in Canada. And chatting with a fisheries scientist about a species that is iconic in the North Atlantic cod, a species that supported Vikings and Native Americans and pilgrims and explorers, that built the wealth of nations and then collapsed in the 1970s due to overfishing, and then again in the 1990s. He mentioned that that stock is now considered a sustainable fishery at just 6% of their historical population. And that shocked me because I realized that this is what sustainability means. So when we think about restoration of abundance, it is a step towards a more abundant future and away from this idea that we can simply sustain the little that we have left. The return on our investment in restoring abundance to the oceans is actually exponential gain. The risk of business as usual, however, is exponential loss. That is where we stand today. And after 2020, I think everybody can understand the catastrophic implications of exponential curves all too well.
It sounds very interesting, a very interesting approach. Thank you for sharing. And I'm happy to hear optimism in your voice and in your plans. So that's great in these days, especially in these days. Tell me, what's the roadmap to the actions that are necessary on this road of restoration?
Well, what we want to do is turn the story of the loss of the ocean into a story of restoration. It's not enough to preserve what little is left. We really need to work efficiently towards restoring the ocean's richness as it was in my grandfather's time. So that includes protecting species, harvesting wisely, protecting spaces, restoring habitats, reducing pollution, and the most important one of all, mitigating climate change. To be successful, we need to build partnerships and projects that are omni-win, getting away from the typical zero-sum game that we operate in, and align multiple stakeholders with outcomes that are defined by science and integrate technology and innovation.
Very exciting. Thank you. So one of the recovery wedges, and you just touched on it, that are focusing on is seaweed farming. Tell me, how can seaweed farming contribute to the sustainability goals, and why is this project so important for humanity?
For centuries, we've been drawing carbon from the biosphere and putting it into the atmosphere and our oceans, of course. So nature-based solutions focus on reversing that trend. We need to decarbonize the atmosphere and re-carbonize the biosphere. Ocean afforestation, so the restoration of marine forests and regenerative aquaculture, this is one of the greatest opportunities to address climate change. And the best part of all is that they can sequester great amounts of carbon. So at Oceans 2050, we're advocating a paradigm for ocean farming that rewards stewardship over exploitation. Regenerative aquaculture contributes to mitigating climate change and provides further valuable ecosystem services. Seaweed farms have the potential to enable millions of profitable businesses while providing raw material commoditization for inputs to plastics, food, fuel, and cosmetics. At Oceans 2050, we've recently launched our seaweed carbon farming project that looks to take cores of sediment from seaweed farms around the world and actually start to quantify the carbon that they've been able to sequester in that sediment. And we have everything from a 300-year-old Japanese farm to newer farms in North America. And it's the first time that globally seaweed farms have come together to understand their benefits and impact for the oceans. And what's exciting to me about regenerative aquaculture is that it can contribute to multiple SDG goals, not just life underwater, but also climate action, gender equality, zero hunger, poverty. It's really an extraordinary opportunity that we have ahead of us.